Good afternoon, everybody. This is Gary from Vigilant Software. Thank you very much for joining this afternoon's webinar, where we're going to cover off some training points for the data flow mapping tool for anybody that is currently using the software or anybody that is new to looking to purchase the product as well. The demonstration today is going to consist of creating or an introduction to the software, assessing the tool, user management, in-depth process mapping exercise, which is where we're going to create a basic sales process, the final outcome, which is ultimately the report you're going to be able to produce from this, and then finally a Q&A towards the end, where we'll cover off any questions you may have raised as we go through the webinar. So an introduction to the data flow mapping tool, the definition of data flow map, a diagram of how personal data flows through a given process and is transferred from asset to asset. The data flow mapping tool was specifically designed to simplify the process of creating data flow maps, which will help you meet the terms of the EU General Data Protection Regulation. An organisation should be looking to create data flow maps of all their existing processes ahead of the GDPR compliance deadline, which as of today's date is tomorrow. Cyber Comply, which is where the Dataflow map is hosted, is an online cybersecurity and compliance platform, which is created and designed by Vigilant Software, and it hosts a number of integrated tools, including our Compliance Manager and the Dataflow mapping tool. In order to create an accurate data flow map of each process, you need to know what every step of the process actually is, who carries out each step, and finally what assets are used to do so. So using the tool, it's easy to use. The data flow mapping tool essentially is built to simplify how you map out your data, giving you more time to spend on identifying and potentially resolving data protection issues. It's geared for repeatability. Data flow maps created within the tool can be easily reviewed, edited, and updated by multiple people as your organization evolves and grows. Logs personal data items. It can generate an inventory of personal data, specifying what the lawful basis is and the types of personal data and the categories of those data subjects. It will also be able to, as I mentioned towards the end of the demonstration, we're going to cover off a report. It will be able to produce a version controlled data flow report, compiling information from the data flow map that we're going to create, and obviously you will be creating as well, in an easy to read format to share with stakeholders or senior management within your business. It embeds data protection by design, as the tool is essential for organizations seeking to embed data protection by design and by default into their own processes. The data flow mapping tool integrates with our compliance manager, where you can record what security controls have been applied to a process and keep track of whether the process is governed by specific regulatory, statutory, and or contractual requirements. User management. So we're now going to switch over into the data flow mapping tool itself, which you should be able to see on the screen. So when you first log on to Cyber Comply, this will be the splash screen that you're greeted with. Over on the right-hand side, we have our data flow mapping tool, which we're going to be covering off today. If you have the compliance manager, that will be a separate demonstration that we hold during the week if you wish to join on to those. At the top right-hand corner, we have a request assistance button, which comes directly into our support team if you need to get hold of us. And then further to the right there, we've got our drop-down menu where you can go through into things like account summary, user management, and so on. So just to go into our account summary for now, this is where the organization's administrator of your business is going to be able to go through and either add users or remove them. And by doing this, all you'd need to simply do is where users is on the left-hand side here, select on the plus button, enter in the first name, last name, email address, and what role they hold within your business. And once you click save, it sends them their joining instructions so they can then log on and start using the tool simultaneously with you. The data flow mapping tool allows up to 5 users out of the box, but you do also have the ability to purchase additional users to join onto the tool if you need to, obviously if your business is of a size where you need to have that many people logged on. So if we come out of here, we're just going to return back to our dashboard, which will be the splash screen for Cyber Comply. And we're going to have a look at another area which we can customize before going through into mapping out our data flows. So below account summary, we have an area for settings. Now, settings is an area where you can input your own classification fields. So the 4 that you would have received or will receive when you first open the data flow mapping tool will be confidential, private, public, and restricted, with the 2 following boxes as sensitive and highly restrictive. These are the custom areas that we popped on. All we need to do is select on add another classification. This box is completely free text, so you can type in whatever you need to, and or equally to add a new classifications, you can also remove existing ones by using either the delete button or simply toggle it off for now, and then obviously toggle it back on when you do need it, depending on the map and the type of record you're going to be storing. Below there, you've then got an area where you can add on custom regions. Now, the ones that we've got here as placeholders is, for example, if you do use cloud-based solutions to store your data, you may know specifically which data center, for example, Microsoft Azure is using to store that information. So we've popped one on here, such as Microsoft Azure in Ireland, and then we've set Ireland as its location. The one below there is if you're part of a US business, you may want to specify certain states where that information is being stored. So we've put Kansas, for example, and then obviously the country of where that's located. All you need to simply do is type or enter in here the location, and then it will bring up a free text box where you can type in any custom regions if you need to. Again, we're now going to return back to our dashboard. And we're now going to move on into the data flow map itself. So we've covered off user management. As I've already covered, the tool will allow up to 5 individual users. If you need to have them expanded upon, we can go up into increments of 5, so you can have 10, 15, 20, and so on. And should you need to free up one of the user access points, you can always remove one of the users, and obviously that will again just free up one of those login access points if you need to. So setup, we've covered login into cyber comply. Essentially, that will be handled by when you either purchase the tool or if you're undertaking a trial of the software, you'll receive an email which will grant you access. You click the link, use the temporary password and update the password when you first log on. We can then navigate to the data flow mapping tool from this homepage, and we're now going to move on into creating a process. So we're just going to switch back to our process screen. So we've now selected the data flow mapping tool, and it brings us to the process section or the process creation area. Before we go through this, we're going to cover off one of the newer points to the software, which is our asset management screen, which can be located at the very top here. Using the drop down, there'll be an asset section for organization assets. Once we select on here, this is an area where you can import your own asset library. If you have one, maybe it's already in an Excel spreadsheet, that can be imported. Alternatively, by clicking on import assets, you can download the Excel template, compile your asset register in a bulk format, and then import it seamlessly into the tool. Once they've then been imported or you've created them from scratch, if we have a look at our company sales website, for example, you'll have the asset type over here, any records that are relating to it, who is the operator of that particular asset, where the asset is located. So we've got it set as United Kingdom. And then below here, we have 6 additional tabs. One of them in the middle here will show any processes that this is currently being used in. The very first one is to show any related controls. So if you're already part of an organization that is accredited with ISO 27001, you can pull through any of those control sets to show, yes, we are using maybe a 5.1.1 in conjunction with this asset. The next tab along on here, we've got a couple of placeholders just to demonstrate today. We can simply select on add requirements, choose from any of the UK laws built into the compliance manager, or alternatively, we can then use any of the GDPR, with that being obviously the main topic of discussion recently. So if we come down to midway down, we can then come into the EU GDPR section, select on the I button next to each one of these controls, and we can just, regulations, and we can see a brief description, which article it's referencing, what status it is, and if you do have the compliance manager, you can then mark whether you're compliant, non-compliant, using this drop down here. So we're going to close out of this section. The next area we're going to move on to is related tasks. Now, here is an area that's more related to the process level itself. It's where you may have an organization's administrator that's going to go through and create the top level of either the assets or processes, and they will then assign these to individuals within the user base of the data flow mapping tool. So we can just select on create task here. We can choose who the owner is going to be. We can give them a deadline, and then followed on by a text input where you can add on hyperlinks to maybe your own internal SharePoint systems as well. The next tab along, as we've already covered, is simply to show which processes this asset is currently being used in. We then have a message board, which will keep track of any changes that have been made to this asset, and also a comment section if you need to leave comments to each other. You can upload files here, but again, any comments that are uploaded into the tool are purely for internal use only. They don't show up any reports. So this is an area where you can use maybe shorthand text or business acronyms and so on. Finally, on this last tab is to show if there's any related assets. Now, all you'd need to do is select on associate asset, and it will give you an access to all of your pre-existing assets in your library, and it's just to show if there's a relationship between the two within your business. So we'll close out of here and just deselect here, and we're just going to now go back to our organization process page. So if we just give this a second to load. Okay, so now we're back on here. At the top of this page, just here, we can search through any of our pre-existing process groups. We can view a top-level pie chart, which just indicates what we are acting as a business within some of our own processes. So we've got one where we're acting as a third party, and the other one is acting as a controller. Dotted around the tool, you'll see these bulb icons, and they're simply just to give you help and tips on the section you're currently working on. And if you want to work on all of your processes in bulk, we can simply select all and then pull them over into this midsection if that's how you prefer to work. So we're just going to minimize off here and close this. So now below there, we've got the ability to create a new process, and then below there, we've got individual process groups. Now, process groups in our demo portal is simply processes and sales. For your organization, you may wish to break this down into individual subsidiaries of your business if you're a larger organization, or simply by department, maybe finance, sales, customer care, human resource, and so on. What we're going to do today is we're going to create a new process from scratch. We're going to build the map and then ultimately end with the report. So we're going to use create new at the top here. You'll then be asked to switch into an edit mode. And what edit mode does to the user that's currently logged on, it takes you off or into a draft state so that anybody else who's currently working on the data mapping tool alongside you on their own login, they won't be able to see your work until you're happy with all of the information you've uploaded and you've chosen to publish that particular process. So we're going to select yes to switch into this state. And then from this area, this is where we can choose to place that process into a pre-existing group. So if we use our drop down, we've got our process and sales. And obviously when you first come to use the tool, you will need to start creating your own group. So selecting on here allows you to give the group its name, subtitle, and then a further description if you choose to. We are going to use sales for today's demonstration, and then we're going to select next. Now on here, this is where you're going to be starting to build the base of your process. Now, whatever information you put in here, it's not set in stone. You can always come back into this page and edit any of the information. Maybe if you're going to put a specific name as the owner, you may wish to change that at a later point. For today's demo, though, we're going to leave it just as a position within our business. So the title of this is going to be software sales within EEA, just so we can differentiate from the one we've already got in the background. The process owner of this, we're going to keep it nice and simple, is going to be our sales manager. And then finally, we can choose what they are going to be acting as. So whether they're going to be a controller, joint processor, or third party. We're going to choose to keep them as a controller of the data in this particular process. And the scope statement for this is going to be transaction of sales within the EEA. Apologies for the spelling. And then the purpose of this is going to be fulfillment of software products we'll just leave that as it is. As I mentioned, we can always come back in here and modify this if we need to. So once we hit save, it will then confirm that that's been completed for us, and it will then populate this middle screen here. Now, there's some key elements that, just to point out to begin with. At the moment, we are still in that draft status. So what we're looking at here, if there was somebody else logged into my portal, they can't see this. A key indicator for that is we've got an orange flag up here, just indicating draft, and also the fact that the data flow map icon is currently grayed out, which would normally be a very prominent purple color if you're then able to go into there and start working on the process map. So again, these same 6 tabs along the bottom here. So whilst you may have a particular control in place against an asset, you may also have a control in place against an entire process. And this is just an area where you can run that reference. So we're just going to add a couple of placeholders here. So we're going to select add a control. We're just going to pick the top one on each one. It's just so that when we view the process report, there will be some sort of context to it that we can demonstrate for you. The next tab along is then going to be any related legal requirements. So again, select an add requirement gives us access to the UK laws as well as GDPR. So we're going to just again pick this very top one. So they're not too relative to what we're working on. It's more just as a page filler when it comes to that report. The next area is then going to be a related task. We are going to create one. So we're going to say the task owner on here is going to be G Baxter. I'm currently logged in as Gary Baxter, so this should help us to differentiate between the two. We're going to say the deadline for this will be, we'll say the 31st of May. Below there, we can then type in anything we want in here. So we're just going to enter test for today's demonstration. And if we wanted to add a hyperlink, you can always use this section here to maybe link it to a SharePoint or an outsourced website if you needed to. So we're going to hit save on there, and it will just confirm that the organization task has been added, like so. The next section on here is to show a relationship between a number of processes within your business. So this isn't necessarily a way to overlap process maps. It's not necessarily a way to link them. It's probably very helpful in the way of if you are having a subject access request being made, it might be easy for you to then navigate through all of your processes where a particular item is, and showing these relationships will help you follow the right route to find out where that person's data might be stored. So we're just going to add a couple on here just as, again, placeholders. So we're just going to choose our sales organization and hit close. Again, we've got the same message board. So as you can see here, it's kept track of all of these modifications I've been making, such as what controls we're adding, which regulations are being added, and any other relationships. Again, we've got that same comment section where we can free text in here and upload any supporting documentation if we want to. And then finally, this area will be populated, but only once you've started creating the map. So it's not until that point that this can be worked on, and this can't be edited, unlike where we were in the asset management system. So once we're happy with all of this information, a few other points we can cover off is if we want to go back in and modify what the process, such as a scope statement or the purpose of the processing is, we can always select here. We can simply delete this. If we deleted this now, nobody else who has access to the tool would ever have known it existed. Or if we are just coming, say, for example, to the end of our day or something like that, we can just close it off. It will minimize it into the group, but it will keep it in that draft state. So you don't have to worried if somebody else in your business is still working, that they'll actually be able to access it and start working on it without you being happy and publishing that work. So now that we are happy with all of this, we're going to come up to the top here. We can see that this is shown as edit mode and it's toggled on. Once we're happy with all of this information, we're going to choose publish changes. And again, we can just enter in test in here just to populate this space, hit publish, and it will confirm the operation's been completed once again for us. And you'll notice a few significant changes on here. One, that the data flow map icon has now been highlighted and that the orange flag has now been removed. So we're now publishing our work. Everybody who has access to our portal is now able to start working on this particular process. There's one additional button that then becomes highlighted to you, and this is where you can clone an entire process. Not only does it clone the process level that we've done so far, it'll also clone the process map within it. So for example, if you're sending out a newsletter to different areas such as inside the EEA, outside the EEA, or to certain countries specifically, the process itself is going to remain exactly the same. So you don't have to keep recreating it from scratch. You can just clone it and then make those small modifications as you see fit. Before we go into mapping out a process, we're going to have a quick look at what the report is based on the process level itself, not necessarily the map included. So this will be the process report. Now the version, how we version these will be purely based on the issue date at the very top here. You'll then have the, so obviously the name of the process itself, so software sales within the EEA. We'll then have who the owner of it is, what we're acting as in this scenario, what the scope statement is, followed by the purpose of processing. And then again, these are just the placeholders as we mentioned earlier. So we've got a list of all of the controls that are being used in conjunction with this process, all of the clauses, any processes that have a relationship. We've then got any tasks that have been assigned to this particular process. And obviously once the map has been created within the process itself, you'll then have a list of all of the associated assets that go along with that as well. Now, there's one extra thing you can do on here. Obviously, we can print or export into PDF. Now, if you want to run this on an entire process group, you can do so. So if we select our other one here, the software sales in the EU specifically, we can then run that report and it will include both of them into the same report, so you're not finding yourself having to run multiple reports or multiple exports from the system in one go. So we'll come out of here, and we're now going to move on into our data flow map for this process. So each time you start a new process or create a new map, you will be greeted by the user manual. This is quite handy if you're introducing new people within your business to start using the product, and obviously this will try and mitigate a couple of hours of training in your side, or having to contact us and obviously wait for a response. Obviously this will give you a quick introduction to get them started straight away. The manual can be downloaded, so it can just be exported into a PDF, or you can use the live one built into the tool by clicking get started and then obviously filter through. Now what's quite handy about the manual is if you don't want to print it off or export it, if you leave it at a certain point and close, we can always jump back by using the bulb icon again at the top right hand corner, and it takes you back to exactly where you left off, so you're not finding yourself having to rifle back through the same manual over and over again. So we're going to close out of here. Since we were just at the top right hand corner, we're going to go from right to left. We're then going to end up on the asset library on the far left hand side, where we're going to go through and explain what they're going to be acting as, how you're going to use them to create your process, and then we're going to show you the mapping process itself. So as I mentioned, from right to left, we have the ability to export the end report into a Word document. This is helpful for a number of reasons. One, if you want to make modifications to that report, such as adding your own company logo, if you use your own internal referencing system, that can all be inputted as well. Essentially, the report itself is not a locked document. There's nothing that is hard-coded into the document. Everything can be edited or manipulated to how you see fit. The next option is to view the report within the tool itself. This doesn't require the process to be saved or refreshed or gone back in and come back out of. So if we run this report now, all of the information on here will be relevant to exactly what's already on the map canvas itself. So we're going to come back through this a little bit later on when we get towards the end of the demo. The next section on here is essentially what we use to build or create the process map itself. The first one is the ability to add a comment, and we can do this to both assets and also connections. Again, just to reiterate on the point earlier, any comments that you add into the tool are purely for internal purposes only. They don't show up on your reports, other than simply referencing that there is a comment on there. The next tab along on here is the connection tool, and this allows us to bridge these gaps between data inputs to assets and then assets to each other. So a key indicator for new data items will be the fact that the connection is a dotted line, and anything between assets separately or between each other will then be a grey solid line indicating the flow of existing data within that process. The next button along here is our move tool. This just allows us to manipulate where we want our items to be on the screen. So this can be quite handy if you are working on a very large map and you need to add on maybe another section to it without having to break the connection. You can just move everything around. All of the data item transfers stay in place. All of the methods of the transfer all remain as they were. The next option on here is our hand tool. This serves as two purposes. One of them is to allow us to navigate or drag and drop the canvas itself. So it's quite handy if you're working on larger maps on smaller laptop screens. It allows you to put it into a full screen mode by using F11 within your browser, and then it gets rid of the side and bottom scroll bars as well. So you've got a bit more real screen real estate to work with. The other function of this is to then select on individual assets where you can go through and give them their names. You can add records to them, choose what they're operating as, locations, and so on. Now, again, this is what we're going to cover off later on. And we can also do this exactly the same when it comes to data inputs and transfers of those data items as well. So we will cancel out of here. We'll leave this highlighted because we do need to remove it off of our process screen today. Lastly, these 6 icons over here should be relatively standardized. So we've got zoom in and zoom out, again, for those smaller screen scenarios. We've got remove or duplicate of an asset. So if we select remove on here, it deletes and the associated data input as well. And then we've got our 2 undo and redo buttons, with undo having a memory of up to 5 times, just to help cover off some of those smaller mistakes you may be making when you first get to using the tool. The last area that we're going to go through before starting to build our map is our asset library, and essentially where we're going to be showing data input items. So at the top here, whilst we did have that asset management screen we went earlier, that never used to be in the tool. That is a new feature. The way that you used to add assets to the tool was by using this. So we'd select on, for example, here, It will then populate the screen over on this side. We'd then select it and then give it its name and so on, and then it would save it into the asset library for future use. This obviously is still a built-in function, because you may find, as we mentioned earlier, as you're going through these processes, you may have a better understanding then as to what assets need to be involved within a process. So you can create them essentially on the fly without having to keep coming in and out of the process map to create those assets. So we'll cancel out of here because we don't need this on here, and we'll just close off of here. The next one that we are going to be using today is the ability to show data items coming into a process. Now, we're only going to be using one, so we can just drag and drop this to anywhere specific on the page. Alternatively, you can just single click it and it will just populate the next available space. Data inputs, there's no limit, as I just mentioned, so we could have 1, 2, and 3, each one having their own different type of transfer types. You could have one maybe via phone, one via email, and one via post, but each one would need to illustrate those different types of transfers, and then they'd all join onto the first asset, for example. The next one down here is our data subject. Now, the data subject in our process maps are going to be used to simply indicate the return of data back to a data subject, such as maybe an onboarding process where you're taking documents from someone to scan and then keep backups of on your machines or on your servers. And then also you need to illustrate the return of those documents being sent back. Alternatively, it could be a receipt document from a sales process that you'll be sending back out to that customer. Below there, we've got the ability to search through our asset library. Now, obviously, over time, as you start creating your process maps and creating more and more assets, this will become quite large and at times probably relatively cumbersome when you're trying to find something quickly. So we've just entered in a quick search box up here, which will just keyword search anything within the asset library itself. So now that we're at this point, we're just going to select on here and remove this because we're not using that as part of our process. And then finally below here, you'll have the asset library itself. What we're going to do, we are actually using pretty much all of these in today's demonstration, and we're just going to single click each one of these and it will populate onto the canvas like so. So we're going to use our company sales website, we're going to use our billing team, we're going to be using our distributor, we're going to use a company server, our service center inbox, sales fulfillment team, and our internal SharePoint system. What you may have noticed is on here, we will have two different areas now. So the library itself will just mainly be storing everything that isn't being used on the process map, and this lighter grey area on the left hand side just above there will be illustrating anything that's currently being used. The reason why it does that is if your library was larger than mine, it will just move these more relevant ones to the top so you can use them more and more. Again, it's geared for that repeatability, so it's easy just to keep repeating the same action without having to obviously rifle back through that library over and over. So now that we're happy with all of the items we're going to be using today, we can just collapse this out of the way, again, just freeing up a bit more screen real estate for us. And we're going to use our move tool just to start manipulating or marshalling these into the areas that we want them. So our data input, the first point it's going to bump into is going to be our company sales website. We're going to put this down towards here. Our billing team is then next in line, so they're going to be the people essentially ensuring that the transaction's gone through and producing the receipt for the customer. We're then going to have our company server over here on the far right-hand side. We're going to have our sales fulfillment team exactly where it is, our distribution team just here, and our service center inbox right in the middle of the page there. So this is the crux of our process. What we now need to do is start bridging those connections between them. To do that, we use our connection tool at the very top here. We just simply hover over the first point we want to join, click it once, and then simply click it again when we hit onto the first asset. We're just going to continue through the rest of the map just to give you an idea of what our process map is going to look like. So we're going to go into our service center. Our service center is going to pass information over to our sales fulfillment team, and then they're going to pass information to our distributor. The service center is also going to make a backup of this transaction, and it's going to be sent to our company server. And then finally, there's going to be one more connection to an internal SharePoint system, which could be used for either marketing purposes further on down the line, or just simply an easily accessible way for other departments to gain access to that data should they need to at any point. We have got one connection here which has a hazard symbol on there. We will explain in more detail what this is indicating as we go through, but just to give you an idea of our process map, these middle sections here, so our company sales website, our billing team and service center, are based in the UK. Our internal SharePoint is using that custom location of Microsoft Azure. The company server itself is based in the Bahamas, and our sales fulfillment team and our distributor are based in France. The reason we do that is so that when we come to the report, we can illustrate to you the function of cross-border processing and also processing of data outside of the EEA as well. So now that we've built our process, we can now start adding in the data items that we're going to be handling. To do that, we select on our hand tool at the top here, and we select on our first transfer, which is the data input that we used at the very beginning. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll have an attributes panel, which is where you're going to go through and start populating what information is going to transfer within your process. And then obviously, as we go further through, we're then going to show how assets are going to handle that data as well. So at the top here, you've got the ability to choose whether it's a data subject or other. Now, other could be maybe you're pulling that information from an external server, or you're gaining it from a separate company. That's entirely up to you. By selecting on other, you'll then get a drop down here where you could stipulate what other is and then give other its reference as well for the process. For today, though, we're going to use data subject, and we're just going to say customers within, and then we'll just leave this as France, for example. The reason for that is obviously our fulfillment team is there, and then if you are going to start illustrating processes across different countries or different areas where you're getting these customer details from, you could then start cloning these processes to show maybe for the UK, Germany, Switzerland, and so on. The next point below here is then going to be the method in which that information has joined our process. Now, the list itself is relatively comprehensive and should cover off most of your requirements. Alternatively, we do have an other option down here where you can then enter in here a more specific method of which that information is being transferred throughout your business. We're going to stick with something nice and simple for this afternoon's webinar and choose internet, as that's essentially the platform that the customer is using to enter in their information. The next option is then going to be showing what data items you're handling, the lawful basis in which you're taking that information on, and then finally, if you are dealing with sensitive data items, the exception that you're going to be putting in as well. So at the top here, next to each one of these, you'll have an I button, and that will just give you a description as to what each one is. So lawfulness of processing for legal basis, or lawful basis, my apologies, and for exception, we'll then have processing of special categories of personal data, things like biometric data, physical and mental health as well. So we'll close out of here. For today's demo, we're just going to use legitimate interests as our lawful basis for taking this information. We could use contractual necessity, but again, these are just placeholders just to be put in place so that we can illustrate this on the process map at the end. So if we can use contractual necessity, below there at the moment, exception is grayed out, and that will only become highlighted, as I mentioned, when you start dealing with sensitive items. On the left-hand side, you'll then have a list of data items, and these will be broken down into personal and sensitive. So typically in this scenario, you'd be taking an address, you'd be taking credit card information for that payment to be made. You'll then be taking an email address for either a sales receipt or further contact if you need. We'll then be taking a login name or username. Maybe if it's they're coming through a secure portal and we've required them to sign up to our business before they can make a purchase. We've then got the name, phone number, and then down here we've got other, and other is an area where you can put in custom data items if there's something in this list that isn't specific enough for you. So the one that we're going to be using is something like shipping address, as that might be different to the actual address of where the card is registered as well. You can add multiples in here. You just simply use the comma button, a comma, and then obviously you keep typing more and more data items, and then this will illustrate correctly when you come onto the report as well. In fact, we will just put on there billing address just to show that as an example later on. Below there, we've then got, as I mentioned, the sensitive data items. So if we were to choose biometric data, we won't continue with this, but we can now see the exception has been highlighted, and we can go through and choose what exception we are using. So we're going to deselect this. And then finally on the right-hand side, we've got who or what our data subject is. So for ours, it's relatively simple and straightforward. It's going to be our customers. And then if we scroll down again, we've got that other box at the bottom where we can enter in something or someone more specific if that's a requirement of your business. So we will select and click OK. So what we can see here is the number of data items we're handling, the method in which the information is being transferred, the reference, so what you want that data input to be known as, and the data source. The bottom here, we've got the option again to add on comments. Again, I can only reiterate this, these do not show up on your reports. And then finally below there, you'll have whether the data is being encrypted at this stage, yes or no. And just as a nice little placeholder, we're going to use HTTPS. So once we're happy with all this information, we'll click apply. What will happen on the screen now is that data input has now been named. So we've got customer France. We've then got the data items that have been transferred along with the arrow to show which way they're traveling. What we're going to do now is just show this information move throughout the rest of our map, and then we're going to move on to how those individual assets are handling that information, what records they're going to be storing, and any modifications you can make to those as well. Now, we've selected on the transfer between our company sales website and our billing team. On the right-hand side, the attributes panel is slightly lessened here, as essentially we can't add new data items. We can only use pre-existing ones. The first thing we need to choose on here is going to be our method of transfer. Now, we're going to keep this nice and simple and just say it's going to be on a system-to-system basis. The next point on here is then going to be the option to choose which data items, if all, are going to be sent across. We're going to select all, and then we can see over here the item that's in question, where it's coming from, the lawful basis, and the subject as well. So we're going to select OK, and again we've got these same comment and data encryption toggles below there as well. So we're going to click OK, and we will just blitz our way through the rest of this map because the same options will be available apart from one, and we'll come to that in just a second. So we're now moving from our billing team to our service center inbox. So we're going to say that this is going to be an email. And once that email has come through, it's going to contain all of this information. Maybe email wasn't the best method here, but we can select it OK. And then below here, we've got comments and then any data encryption at that point. Now, this is where our data is going to start either dropping off or not making its way through to all of the different assets or the different prongs coming off of our service center inbox. So where the one place that we do know that all of this information is going to be backed up to is going to be our company server, and that's going to be simply as a backup. So we're going to choose this first connection here. Now, if you recall at the beginning when we made this connection, there was a hazard symbol on there. The reason for that is it's going to ask you to input any if there's any appropriate safeguards or if there's any derogations applying. That's purely because you're transferring to a third country outside of the EEA. So we're still going to go through and choose what the method of this is. So we're going to say it's a backup. The data items is going to be all 7 of them again. Any comments, any data encryption, and then finally the transfer to third country information. All we need to do is select on the appropriate safeguards or derogations. You'll then be given another drop down here where you can then choose the appropriate safeguard or derogation as we just mentioned. So we're going to choose just standard data protection clauses. Once we're happy with all of this, we can select OK. The hazard symbol has now disappeared. The line has now returned back to a grey colour instead of red, and we've got an indication of the number of items that are transferring. We're just going to finish off doing this between the rest of our assets within our map. So we're going now from our service center to our sales fulfillment team. And we're going to say that this is going to be an email. That's then going to be not all of these items, as they don't need to have all of this because the payment has already been transacted through the billing team. So we're going to say they're going to need the address, they're going to need an email address, name and phone number, and the shipping billing address. Once we're happy with this, we can select OK. So we're now only sending 5 of these items on. And again, if there's any comments or data encryption, that could be toggled on as well. From the sales fulfillment team, going to our distributor. This is going to be, for example, you could say maybe through the internet. So if you're using maybe an online portal for your distributor, we could choose that option. Alternatively, we could use, if it's an email or if it's done over the phone, we can choose these options as well. So we're going to choose, again, system to system. So we're going to say, yes, it's done through a portal that we have access to. And then the data items is actually going to be all of these. So if anybody is familiar with people like DPD or larger courier companies, they have the ability to text or email their own customers to let them know when they're going to be arriving. So this information will be transferred over. We're going to select OK. We then can add comments again, any encryption at this point, and finally apply. The very last connection we're going to go through before going through the asset managements themselves, we're going to click on our connection from our service center inbox going to our internal SharePoint. Now again, not all of this information needs to go through. This is going to be handled via a private network. Add data items, and we're going to say that we want to take an email address, name, phone number, and we will actually take the address so that we can obviously target the correct regions if we're going to be using this as a marketing tool further on down the line. So we'll click OK, and if there's any comments or data encryption, we can toggle those on as well. So far what we've illustrated, just to recap, is 7 data items coming in from our customer. They're handled by our company sales website, where they simply handshake that to our billing team. The billing team ensure that the transaction has been confirmed and it's happy to go forward. It then gets sent to a central service center box, where that's then distributed across the rest of our business so that the customer receives their fulfillment of the order. We've got a backup of that information, and it's also being used internally for marketing purposes if we needed to, or simply future contact with that customer. So now that we've built the majority of it, we're just going to go through 1 or 2 of the assets to add on a particular record or illustrate one that we've already used before. So if we use our company server, for example, it will show that we've already got 1 record, and that's purely because records will store to an individual asset, so that every time you use that asset, that record is going to be stored. If you don't want it to do that, your best way to mitigate this is by giving each, creating essentially an almost duplicate of the same asset, giving it a slightly different name so you can differentiate between the 2, and then obviously store different records on each one. That way it won't impact across different processes, and you won't have to remove it or duplicate one, causing it to be dropped out from an earlier process. So very much in the same way of the data items, you'll have a number of drop downs that you'll need to select. So at the top here, we can choose if it's going to be a cloud application, or essentially what you want that asset to be displayed as. Now, we've currently got it seen as a cloud application. We could change it to actually be more of a physical piece of hardware that is based over in the Bahamas. So if we change this to server, when we save or apply these changes, it stores it in that asset library. So again, it will then be remembered and usable again in the future with that new icon. We've then got the reference here. So at the moment, we've got it called Company Server Global. Just to illustrate a change on here, we're going to remove the global section. The next tab is then going to be the records themselves. Now, there's no limit to the number of records you can add to a particular asset, and that's going to be quite handy when dealing with servers and so on. To add a record, we simply click up here on the top right-hand corner, but to obviously prevent us from creating the same record over and over again, we're just simply going to edit one that we've already got on here. The same boxes will be visible to you when you select on adding a new record. So we've got the name, so we've got online sales transactions. We've then got the classification. Again, this will give you access to those custom ones you've uploaded as well. We've then got what the format of that's going to be, whether it's digital text. Obviously ours is, it's all done through a sales website. We've then got whether it's physical information, maybe it's the reception desk that stores maybe the post, or some form of courier information as well. The next section down here is then going to be the retention period for this record. Now, we've currently got ours set to be unknown. The reason for that is so that when we come into the report, we can illustrate how that highlights if there's undefined retention periods. But the other drop downs on here will be days, weeks, months, and years, and then also you can select the number on the left-hand side. The final section on here is going to be who the recipients of this information are. This is not a mandatory area. You don't have to enter into here. It's just something you may want to keep a track of further on down the line, people who may have access to this record. We've just simply got a placeholder here as IT manager, as they're essentially the head administrator of that particular asset within our business. Once we're happy with all of that, you then hit save, and it will then store them like this. Records, as I mentioned, can't be removed off an asset, but they can be edited or modified further on down the line. The next section down here is then going to be what that particular asset is operating as within your business. Now, obviously, because we're seeing as a controller, this is going to be a controller of our data within our business as well. The next one is the locations. Now, the location list we've got here, what it will do is it will automatically move all of the more commonly used locations towards the top of the list. Again, just helping with that speed of creating assets or creating connections further down the line. And what you'll see next to each one of the country names, you'll then have what it is with regards to whether it's EEA, non-EEA, or whether there's been a EC adequacy decision made. We've also got our custom locations, so we can see here that Microsoft Azure, and obviously that's been bumped to the top because we're using it as our internal SharePoint system. Below there, we've got the same comments. we've got any data encryption, we've got it toggled on as yes, so our server currently uses BitLocker as its type of encryption. So if we now minimize there, we now click apply, what you'll see is the icon has been modified to illustrate a server icon, the name has been modified, and if we navigate back over to the left-hand side, we can see that that information has been updated in our asset library as well, so it's already been modified for future use. So that is our process map. Now, just to illustrate that move tool that we looked at earlier, if you did need to free up space like so, we can drag and drop this to anywhere we want on the screen. All of those connections stay in place. The name of the assets will always clip over the top of the transfer so that they're always readable at all times. And this then frees up an extra bit of space in here if you need to add in more and more assets as your process map may grow over a particular meeting of trying to figure out where the data is being handled. So that is the process map we're going to be building today. We do have more complex ones. If you'd like to have copies of those, do get in touch and we're more than happy to send them out to you. That's not a problem. And what we're going to move on to now is going to be the report. And once we've gone through the report, we're going to cover off any questions you may have that have been created during the webinar this afternoon. So there's two ways that we can view the report. We can view it in Word. We're not going to today because it will open up on the wrong screen. We're going to view it live inside the tool. Now, if you've noticed, I've not had to save anything. I've not refreshed the page or had to log in and log back out again. We simply click on View Report. It's going to give you, again, that same issue date just to keep track of auditing if you needed to. But if you could just imagine this in a Word document, everything is customizable in here if you needed to. Nothing is locked into that document, so you can change things like I mentioned, your company logos and your own specific record keeping references at the top there as well. So section one that we're going to come into is going to be the process overview. So this is going to list the process itself, what it's called, who the owner of it is. So this will be your organization. You'll then have the scope statement, the purpose to processing, and then a very top level summary of your overall process itself. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to say, according to the process map and the details of the components, this process, and then gives you bullet points. It's going to outline the types of lawful basis that you're taking into consideration when you're dealing with data, how many data items you're dealing with. If you're using any sensitive data items, it has automatically picked up that there is cross-border processing, so that's our links from the UK to France and so on. And then it also picks up that there is transfers to locations outside of the EEA as well, which is to our Bahamas server base. Below there, you'll then have the essentially a snapshot of the process. Now, if you're in a meeting and you're trying to illustrate this, if it's not too easily readable from the document that you'd have exported, you can always click the link above and it'll return you straight back into the CyberComply portal where you can view it on its original scale within the map canvas itself. Section 1.2 is a list compiled of all of the personal data that you're going to be handling. So underneath each one of these headers, there'll be a description as to what's entailed, and then we've got a summary again. A lot of this is going to be just reminiscent of what we saw at the very beginning, so it's going to be none of the personal data items are sensitive, and the lawful basis for process, and 7 of the items are contractual necessity, as we selected when we went through creating the process. On the left-hand side, you'll have a list of all the data items. You'll then have a list of the data subjects, followed by a lawful basis, and an exception if we were dealing with sensitive items over on the far right-hand corner. Below there, data subjects, these would be listed based on what the subject is being named as, where they're located, and again, if there's any comments relating to that subject as well. Below there, we've got our asset register. Now, this is going to let you know if any of the assets are seen as a processor or a controller. It will let you know that 6 of the identified assets are located within the EEA, and obviously that other one that isn't is the one that's going to be based in the Bahamas. The first column on here will be a list of the asset and the name, the name and the asset type. We're then going to have its location followed by the status, so whether it's EEA, non-EEA, etc. The third column along is what they're operating as. Now, the hazard symbol is simply there to indicate that someone or something within your business is handling that information, or something or someone within that process is handling your data than a controller. The next stage is if there's any encryption at that point. So as you recall, on the company server, we toggled on yes for BitLocker. We can then see any records that are relating to that particular asset, and then finally a list of if there's any comments relating to those assets as well. What we do find is anybody that isn't used in the comments area, what you can do is export this into a Word document and simply remove that column from the report to tidy it up and obviously not have irrelevant information on the process report. The next section down is going to be a list of your records. Now, obviously, we've only got one, and that's being stored on our company server. So it will just keep track of here. The very top point under that summary is indicating that we have an undefined retention period on one of our records. That will be indicated on the table by shown as not selected, and then it will give you a breakdown or a list of all of the classification types of your records. So obviously if we were using sensitive, personal, private and so on, or public, it will then just give you a list and how many of them are being classified in those sorts of ways. The table itself will illustrate the name of the record, its classification type, its format, retention period, and finally who the recipients of that information is. And the very last section on here is, whilst we do have the map in the background illustrating how we handle data, where we move data to, this is going to give you a breakdown in a table format as to the methods in which the information is joining or being transferred, the data source, so the data subject is in this case. We've then got the data items that are moving from one area to another area of our business, where they're coming from, where they're going to, if there's any encryption on those transfer types, if there's any third country transfers. So if we scroll down, we've got our safeguards in place here. And then finally, we have that comments column, which can be removed should you wish to at any point as well. At this stage, we'll give you the ability to export it into a Word, so into that Word document, but alternatively, you can just simply export it into a PDF or print it directly from your browser, providing you're using Chrome or any of the modern browsers. So if we cancel out of here, we can then save this process, and then that'll be available for us to, again, add on related processes to further on down the line once we're building more of a repertoire or a bigger library of our processes. This can always be referenced to as well. So if we now close out of here, we're going to return back to our process page, and that's just so that I can illustrate that it's now starting to show related assets. So if we now look on here, so we've got all of these tabs that we'd gone through and populated, so controls, requirements, and so on. And then on the far right-hand corner, you'll then have a list of all those assets that are now currently being used. And if we were to go back into the asset management system and select on the individual asset itself, it will then show this as a related process to it. So that is the data flow mapping tool. That's as much as we're going to be covering today in the visual part of the presentation. We're just going to go back into our presentation board here just to ensure that we have covered everything. And we are now at our Q&A section. So I will pull up any questions we may have. Okay, so Simon, the question about publishing changes. So say, for example, yourself and I were working on the same portal, and there were three other of our colleagues on the portal at the same time. If you were trying to create a process and I was trying to create a process, if I then publish mine, yours will still remain in that draft state. It's only then, it's only you that will be able to make that decision to publish it or not. Is there a way of cloning a process without cloning assets? Yes, in a way. What you would need to do is, before you start creating the process map, if you know that it's going to be a process you're going to use quite regularly, simply clone the process at that stage and then go through and start using pre-existing assets within your library. Can you define a process as an asset and then include it in another process to build a higher level view? Would you? No, so an asset would be a physical entity within your business where data is being transferred. An asset wouldn't really be shown as a process or define it as a process. So Jonathan, with regards to drag and drop icons, it is on an individual basis, so you would just simply drag and drop the ones you do want to use. There's no multi-select to pull them all across all at once. Ralph, in terms of data classification, is there some good approach to do that? What would you recommend? In all honesty, we can't obviously comment on your own internal classification types. We do, I may be able to obtain a list of very common classification types, but essentially Vigilant Software acts as a software development, not so much on the consultancy, but I'm more than happy to find that information out for you and share that with you after the demo. That's not a problem. Bolpreet, hi Gary, can you speak as to the difference between account administrators and customers in the user management screen? At the moment, the organization administrators are the only ones that can add users to the portal. If you set someone up as a customer, essentially all that will do is allow them access to the tool, create processes, but it doesn't allow them to add new users to the portal. There will be further modifications to the differences between those further on down the line, but at the moment that is essentially its purpose between the two. No problem. Okay, so I think it is Ralph, it's yourself that I'll need to come back to after the meeting, as I mentioned. I don't think we've got any other questions. We do have another half an hour booked out for the webinar. Obviously, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. I'm hoping that everything has made sense. If there's anything you want me to go back through, please do let me know now, and obviously I'll just recap back over it for you. What is the support available? So with regards to the support, that's more for technical use of the tool itself. Again, like I mentioned, we are the developers of the tool. When it comes to, I suppose, more of a consultancy field, such as you maybe need to know what classification you're using or what lawful basis, that's not something, unfortunately, we'd be able to assist you on, and that's something you'd need to either source legal counsel or a consultancy on. But essentially the support will be if you need to add or remove users, if you want to know how to use certain aspects of the tool, such as how do I clone a process, as a very basic example. But our support is there to aid you in using the product, not how you're going to map your data. At the moment, Ralph, the system is only in English. We are looking to expand upon languages, but that will be in a little while. And obviously, once we've got feedback on more of the common language areas, the more common languages we are being requested to put into the tool. Okay. Yes, of course, not a problem, Ralph. With regards to pricing and how the licenses work, the pricing is charged at £900 plus VAT, obviously depending on where you are purchasing from. That's per year, so it's an annual subscription. Within that annual subscription, you will be privy to an entire support team where you'll be able to access that via the request assistance button within the tool itself. We will accept feedback through that method as well. So if there is something like language support or another feature you'd like added into the tool, that will then be made available through that. And it also includes all of the updates that get pushed to the tool as well. So they're not an add-on purchase further on down the line. So if we were to add a new feature set into it, we would then obviously push that down automatically into the tool, so it's available to you next time you log on. With regards to licensing, essentially, when you first purchase the tool, you'll be given access. You'll have 5 users that can access the tool. If you want to expand upon that, that would be charged at £500 for the extra 5 users. So essentially, £100 per user, but we can only administer them in 5 blocks at a time. And with regards to licensing, if you want to use it as a consultant, for example, it's not overly advisable. The reason being is obviously the organization name will always be what it was originally set up for. So if you're doing consultancy for company A, for example, and then went to company B, all of their reports have company A's UID or company name listed. Any plans to make the data subject asset to be the input as well as the output, i.e. the same data might interact with the process through different data inputs? Yes, there is, I think it might already do that if I understand the question correctly, but again, I will get more of a detailed description on the data. Is it the subject asset or the data subject that you're referring to? The data subject asset to be the input. So I think a better way to explain that is, no, the data subject at the beginning that's why you give the data input its reference. So also we called it a customer or so on, but there's no way to duplicate those data inputs. So we can take that as feedback. I think now I understand what you were trying to get at. Is there an update roadmap for future features? Yes, Matthew, obviously we can only disclose a certain amount of it. It's not until it's set in stone and it's confirmed to be working that we know exactly where this is going to be going. With regards to the next update to the tool, is due to go out next Thursday. So as of today's date being the 24th, it will be on the 31st, I believe, actually. There'll be an update going out where there'll be additional tools available to you for Article 30. It's quite a complex update, so it's a little bit difficult to explain over the webinar for today. Where are we up to? Ralph again, interesting price. Can you share the presentation after to share with my line manager, audio or PDF? Yes, Ralph, the webinar that we've completed today is already pre-recorded anyway. It's essentially a rerun through that we do on a monthly basis. The purpose for these is so that we can cover off any questions with existing customers as opposed to demoing the product to new customers. So we do already have a pre-recording of it. This will also have been recorded as well, and also we're more than happy to share that with yourself to also present to management as well. Simon Cook, is there a user forum or similar to discuss questions and best practice? At the moment there isn't. That is something we are looking to work on from a support angle, and obviously that would be something hosted on our Vigilant website, not necessarily through Cyber Comply itself, because that's essentially where we store the software tools themselves. It's a very good point, and again, like I said, it is something we've been discussing for a while. Again, so you can all talk amongst yourselves. If somebody has something to offer, then that would be beneficial for everybody. With regards to also the rest of that question, sorry, Simon, you've put more similar discuss questions and best practice. We do have some example templates, which I think, if I recall, Simon, I think I did send out to you, or it might have been somebody else in our support ticketing system. We do have a couple more that we are obviously happy to share, and they've actually been completed by in-house consultants here, so they're essentially as accurate as they can be, and reliant on the GDPR. No problem. Just give it a couple of more minutes. Like I said, the meeting is going to go on until 4:30 anyway. It's going to remain open that long. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes, just see if there's any more questions coming through. And then, like I said, after the demonstration, anybody that's requested additional information will then be in touch towards the end of the week. So it'll be tomorrow that you'll most likely get a response from myself or one of the team. Okay. If there's no further questions, I'm just going to pop myself on mute now, and obviously, like I said, it will remain open until 4:30, and any additional questions that come through will come back to you straight away after the demonstration, or most likely tomorrow once we've managed to compile them all together. But again, thank you very much for your time, everybody, today. I hope you found it useful. If you do need to get in touch with us at any point, we've got the information up on screen at the moment. So we've got a request demo, and obviously to get in touch with us, either use the contact form on our website or the phone number that's also listed on there as well. Again, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to speaking to some of you very shortly. Thank you.